Welcome to the Center on Transition Innovations. My name is Staci Carr, and I'm a developmental psychologist at VCU Autism Center for Excellence. Today we're going to be talking about prompting personal health and independence and community participation and safety for individuals with autism spectrum disorders. Please take the next few seconds to read the case study of Tom. Throughout this webcast, we'll be discussing strategies as it relates to Tom's personal history. When we talk about community participation, we're really talking about inclusion, and inclusion in the most comprehensive way, speaking about independence, physical well-being, and healthy choices. And through community participation, all of this is possible for all students, especially those with autism spectrum disorders. I am thankful to all those who said, "No, it's because of them, I did it myself." This is a quote from Einstein himself, and he speaks about achieving the greatest independence possible. And this is our goal for all students with autism spectrum disorders. However, there are several barriers that we need to consider when discussing supports for individuals on the spectrum. Those with autism often have a difficult time making choices and often are not given the opportunity to do so. Sometimes in school they are supported to the point of other individuals prompting them through several tasks, including personal hygiene, navigating the school building itself, and academics and social opportunities. Having an instructional assistant along with a person often creates that barrier so that individuals cannot make choices on their own. Additionally, they have difficulty with problem solving and not giving the opportunity to do so with this as well. There are cases where students will often come to a situation and are frozen by not knowing how to make the best possible choice and problem solve through a very simple activity like finding a pencil to complete a task, or making lunch to go to work, or finding clean clothes in their closet so that they could get dressed for school. Understanding the process of problem solving is something that we need to absolutely incorporate throughout our teaching. And it's not something to put in aside as to academics. Academics are absolutely important, but for students like Tom, those skills as problem solving and choice making, those are the skills that he needs in order to be successful and independent in a job, in education, and in life. When we looked at Tom's case study, he wants to live independently. He wants to get married. He wants to have a job. And if he's not able to problem solve and make choices for himself, this is going to be very difficult. So why would we encourage independence? Independence defines ourselves. Being able to identify who we are, who we want to live with, who we want to interact with, those people that become our social network, those are the people that shapes our experiences, that shapes how we see ourselves. If we set goals and we achieve those goals, that's what makes us reliant and confident to move forward in other academic and social and community activities. If we set small goals and are able to meet them, we feel that great sense of accomplishment. And that sense of accomplishment is reinforcing and motivating to keep us going and keeping us continuing to make those choices. It offers a sense of control. being able to make a choice is a shared control. So for individuals on the spectrum, if there's a teacher who's working with them and they're able to offer opportunities to make a choice, them having that autonomy to say, I choose this over this, really allows them to have a sense of control and be able to feel that they are independent in their decision. Providing choice is also a way of reducing anxiety. It reduces non-compliance, not wanting to complete tasks. If you were to provide a choice of you can do math on the computer or you can do math in a group, for some individuals, group work might be absolutely appropriate and they may want to do that. However, some individuals might want to do that alone on the computer. And if they're accomplishing the same outcome, that choice can mean the difference of showing that they are able to do an activity versus not doing the activity at all. We want to encourage independence because it reduces dependence. Oftentimes, individuals on the spectrum graduate from high school and they are unable to move past getting out of their house, finding social opportunities, going to college, not being able to integrate into the community because they don't have that choice. They don't have the ability to advocate for themselves. And those skills that parents really took a lead on initially all through school, that kind of falls away when you're an adult. And you don't want to be dependent on your family. And so being able to have a voice and say, I want to do this or I want to go here is something that we really want to encourage. So promoting independence. We have these ideas and priorities that really shape what we want to do in life. So helping the individuals identify these goal areas and setting measurable goals that they can learn to dream and achieve is really going to increase their personal independence, their sense of accomplishment, and their ability to integrate fully into the community. So we need to help students identify a goal and setting those goals. We often set goals for our students, and we have IEP goals and we have person-centered planning goals. And what we really need to do is be asking the individual themselves, what do they want to accomplish? And what goals do they want to see for their future? And what are the steps that they need to take in order to meet those goals? We also want to recognize what their strengths are. What are the strengths of the individual? If there's someone who is very interested in math, and that's a strength for them, that is going to be very motivating for them to continue to achieve goals in the future. If their strength is art and not academics, if you find a goal around art and creating opportunities socially for art, they are going to be highly successful because that's their motivation. So really looking at and capitalizing on a person's strengths is important. Prioritizing goals is very important too. Thinking about where the individual is, whether they're in high school, they're graduating from high school, they're about to enter the workforce, or what have you, prioritizing their goals so that they're met in a reasonable way so that their next environment is going to be as successful as possible. So these are the things that we really need to think about. How do we help individuals realize their goals? This is not set a huge goal and hope and pray that they're going to meet it. We absolutely have to step that out and make sure that we're setting those small mini goals so that they can kind of check them off like a to-do list. We do this often all the time. So we set a goal perhaps to lose weight. We're not going to set a goal to lose 20 pounds in a week. That's not manageable. So we have to be very smart about how we're setting our goals. If we were to set that goal of losing 20 pounds in a week and we didn't meet it, we're not going to feel very good about ourselves. The same thing is true with any goal. So we really need to think about where we're going to put that goal, How is it going to be achieved? What supports are going to be needed to make sure that this person is successful as possible? What are the strategies that they need to be supported to achieve this goal? And talking about these strategies, talking about the needs, the support needs that an individual has, really lends themselves to identifying in the future how to ask an employer or how to ask a coworker or a professor even, I need these accommodations, these supports to be as successful as possible. That doesn't mean that I'm not less. That doesn't mean that I'm not, not capable. It means that I need these supports in order to meet my goals. So we need to talk about the goal areas to optimize independence once they are into an adulthood. And those goal areas are personal growth, so emotional goals. Wealth. Obviously, we want a paycheck, and everyone wants a paycheck, but wealth beyond just achieving that paycheck. What sorts of employment goals can you set? People, so social goals. What friends do you want to have? What groups do you want to belong to? What clubs do you want to participate in? What extracurricular activities would you like to be involved with? Health. This is very important. A lot of times our individuals on the spectrum are not terribly interested in exercise or have a very restricted diet. And that coupled with some medications can often lead to obesity, or extreme weight gain, lethargic behavior, and this kind of manifests in a not very healthy lifestyle. On the opposite end, though, exercise can really be promoting a sense of health, wellness. It can reduce the stress and anxiety. It could be a nice outlet for individuals when they are having anxiety or depression with any aspect of their life. So it's something that we really want to consider as well. And then career. And this could be career readiness, it could be career advancement, it could be changing careers, but we really need to look at these goal areas. So we first look at where are you at right now? What is your goal? What are you currently doing? And so let's say for Tom, he's doing pretty well. He is fairly successful academically. So personally, he's okay. Sometimes he has some anxiety issues and new situations. So that might be where he is right now. Wealth. This is an area that's not ready for him to really set a goal yet, because he hasn't really looked at employment options very, very much. How about social? Well, he has some friends. He likes to talk about movies. He has a few close acquaintances, but not that many friend outlets. And health and exercise. So we want to go through all these areas and find out where he's at. And then what's the target? What does he want to do? Now, one of his goals is to live independently, but currently that is a lofty goal. So perhaps the goal might be that he finds out how much money he needs to save to have an apartment. And so then we would set the goal for something very manageable and give him the supports and the tools so that he can meet that goal. So he could look at Apartment Finder, he could go online, he could talk to other people to find out how much an apartment would cost, and then how much his job would pay. And so then learn to budget and start looking at things that way. So then we talk about when. When are we going to want to meet this goal? And I would like to say that between 1 to 2 weeks, having those small manageable goals so that you can check in very quickly to see if you're meeting them is a good strategy. If you leave the goal out for a month or 2 months or 3 months, there's oftentimes that lag and not being able to check back to make sure that progress is being made. And this might be something that you set up as goals that you know a student is going to make and meet within a week or two. And that's absolutely okay, because meeting those goals is going to help self-esteem and acceptance and feeling like they're doing the right thing. And then the how piece is, how are you going to, what strategies do you need to meet these goals? And so this is a form that you could use when setting goals with students. What we can see, though, is personal growth and health. Those two areas really speak to personal well-being, that physical well-being, that health. And that healthy lifestyle really can elevate the success in the other two areas, other three areas. Community participation. This is the other thing that we were talking about earlier. This is the area where those social exchanges are going to happen. That's where you're going to meet new people. This is where you're going to find peers in your community, in your workplace, that you can eventually perhaps have social exchanges with and outside of work. Think about who you work with. Do you go out with them after school or after your job? Sometimes maybe, sometimes no, but sometimes you find those people that you really connect with, and sometimes a job is where you spend a lot of your time. So absolutely knowing that those social opportunities can exist in a career setting. And then wealth. Obviously, if you have stable employment, that is going to lead you to the most independence, because you're able to pay for social activities, you're able to pay for your housing, you're able to make those bill payments and so forth. And what does this all relate to? Inclusion, of course. So we really want to talk about how we are going to best include a person with autism in their community setting. So how do we do that? We have to choose the right activity. If you are very interested in gardening and someone told you, you know, you're not allowed to join a gardening club, you're going to have to go to football games every weekend, you probably wouldn't be terribly happy. Same side, if you are a football fan and you were told you need to go to gardening classes every weekend, you're not going to be as happy. So really finding that right activity, that right fit. And restricted interests, and this is an area that we talk about with an autism diagnosis, it can be a restricted interest, or it can actually be a hobby. And so those hobbies that we spend time on, money on, we have social networks around, those are things that can flourish and become friendships and really include a person in the community. So think about the different opportunities that are out there. There's pools, there's parks, there's geocaching, frisbee golf, there's the YMCA, there's fitness clubs, there's programs at local universities. There are numerous opportunities, but sometimes you have to think outside the box. Thinking about trips and outings. Sometimes there are trips to take a bus to New York City, and you can go with a friend or go with a parent or go with a relative. And that's an exposure to a new opportunity. And you may see plays, and that might be something of an interest. And that becomes a new outlet for social activity and community participation. Exercise and sports. I can't say that enough, the importance of being active and finding a sport that you can be very interested in. I know a lot of my friends with autism who really enjoy going to baseball games, and they keep stats. But they go with their friends, they watch the game, they compare their stats, and it's a very acceptable, nice activity. You're out in the community, you're enjoying a sporting event, you're with friends, and it's a nice bonding experience. There's hobbies, there's games, there are stores that offer different clubs for anime or for different video games or role-playing games, and those are opportunities for anyone, and those might be interests of someone with autism. There are social events and outings that might be whitewater rafting, not saying that that's for everybody, but it's absolutely an option. There's all sorts of different things, and you're not going to necessarily know what the best activity is until you experience them. And so you may not know that an individual would really like watching Broadway shows or going to local music events if they never had that opportunity. So providing those opportunities, providing those outings really can move someone into a variety of different community participation activities. With that said, we need to know how to be safe in the community. So what are the rules based on where you're going and what activity you're doing? So how do you interact appropriately? If you're at a sporting event, you can hoot and holler and you can yell, and you yell for your team, and you can grumble a little bit, but you wouldn't necessarily attack the other team's bench, or you wouldn't yell at the ref too loudly. So making sure that you know what the rules are for the setting. If you're in a Broadway show and there's something that you like, you wouldn't hoot and holler in a Broadway show because you need to be calm and just watch. So knowing in advance those hidden rules that we all take for granted is extremely important. What about general public rules? Restroom behavior is something that we kind of forget, and there's actually websites dedicated to teaching individuals appropriate male bathroom behavior and what urinal to go to based on when you enter the bathroom and who's there, and not to talk because you can't talk in the bathroom, and you need to wash your hands and all those sorts of things. And what about restaurant behavior? Do you eat with your fingers if you're eating pasta? No, you can't do that. But if you do that at home, is it acceptable in the restaurant? But all these things are things that you can prime a person prior to going into the environment to make sure that they're successful. And you can absolutely use visual supports as needed. You can do little reminders. You can talk about hand signals. So, if you do this, that means you shouldn't probably engage in that behavior. And what about if you're in the community and you need help? Who do you go to? Can you ask someone on the street? That's probably not advisable unless they're wearing a uniform. Well, what about, can you go up to a random person? That's not safe behavior either. So then we talk about how to interact with the police, fire, security, those first responders. And one of the things that I work with individuals on the spectrum about is really talking about remaining calm. And sometimes anxiety really heightens when they're feeling lost, or they've not sure how to get back to their seat, or time has gone too long, or there's a transition and they're not sure what to do. So remaining calm and then finding someone in a uniform. And sometimes there might not be someone in a uniform. What if you're there at the mall? So then we talk about finding someone with a badge with their name, and everyone who, like say you go to Target, everyone at Target has a red shirt on. Find someone with a red shirt and their name tag. And that's a way of identifying someone who can help you. It's important to disclose. So if you are on the spectrum and you need to interact with someone, you need to let them know that I may need some help. You might need to write this down. I don't understand. Please say it again. Oftentimes you can make a little card that you can just turn over, like a license that says, I'm an individual with autism. I don't understand, or I have a hard time talking, whatever the situation might be, so that the individual receiving the card, the first responder or the security person or someone, an employee, will know how to interact, hopefully, with you. Sudden movements. That's not a good idea. If you're an individual with autism and you're driving in a car and the police officer comes to pull you over for something that you've done, if you reach really quickly into your back pocket, that's a very difficult thing to do that you shouldn't do, because a police officer might think that you're doing something inappropriate, or reaching for the glove box, or reaching under your seat, or what have you. Those sudden movements scare first responders. Running away, another thing that we can't do if you are interacting with someone who is trying to help you. If you run away, that signals a sense of either one, something's very wrong and they're going to chase after you, or two, you've done something very inappropriate and they're going to chase after you. And neither is going to result in a very favorable outcome. There's nothing wrong with asking for help and saying, I don't understand, or say it again, or write it down. Those are all great solutions for interacting with first responders. Paula Cluth said, the more you try to control the situation, the less control you have, and this is absolutely the case. So I've seen law enforcement who didn't know an individual had autism and tried to put their hands on them, and if a person with autism has some sensory issues or doesn't like to be touched, then they're going to start perhaps flailing or acting aggressively, and the first responder is not going to respond as if, oh, this person has autism and doesn't like to be touched. They're going to respond as, this person is trying to escape or trying to do something harmful, and I need to respond that way. We're going to talk about healthy choices now, and this is nutrition, hygiene, medication management, exercise, relationships, and sexual behavior. And so the important thing to consider is the individual with autism getting this information with their peers? Are they getting this information from media? How are they going to get this information? And so when we think about things like nutrition, we think about what is most important to keep that person healthy. So we think about eating a balanced diet, taking your vitamins, making sure that your choices for nutrition are the best for you. Hygiene is something that we talk about also, and this is another barrier to social interactions, to keeping a job, to getting a job, to interacting romantically. If you don't smell good, if you don't brush your teeth, if you don't comb your hair, if you don't wear clean clothes, not many people are going to want to be around you. And so making sure that you're talking with the individual about these are the things that you need to do every day. And so providing a checklist. I've worked with people who were in adulthood who oftentimes would meet with me and their hair seemed kind of greasy, their teeth were not very clean, they had some body odor. And so when we talked about what their daily routine looked like, it didn't include things like putting on clean clothes, brushing their teeth because they didn't like the toothpaste, washing their hair. They may get in the shower, but they don't use soap. So really identifying where those gaps are and making sure you're putting them as part of the daily routine and the daily schedule. And this obviously needs to be starting way back in early childhood, but if this is kind of manifesting now as an adult, we really want to make sure that we're taking care of this and providing those supports as needed. Medication management is something also that really can hinder independence. If you're not able to manage your own medications, knowing when to take them, how much to take, how frequently to take them, you may miss doses, you may over-medicate, and both situations can be very deadly. So making sure that you're using either app reminders, a little pill case with a reminder, or it's part of your routine. Every time after I brush my teeth, I take my medication, so that you know that this is happening every day. Because if you want to live independently, these are things that you absolutely have to do. Exercise is something that's very important too. And I talked about this earlier, about how exercise really helps for managing stress and kind of curbing that weight gain that might happen from having a sedentary lifestyle. And some things that I find that are really useful for individuals on the spectrum are having things like a Fitbit, because they like to electronically keep track of how well they're doing, and when they reach their 10,000 steps or 5,000 steps, whatever you decide that goal is going to be. You can also track it in an Excel worksheet. You can have a personal trainer meet with someone who has autism and provide a very structured routine that they do every other day, that when they come to the gym. So those are our options for exercise. Relationships is another thing that, we need to figure out how we're going to interact with people, from strangers and acquaintances to friendships to family and to intimate partners. And so knowing the difference of a stranger, that you don't hug a stranger, you don't kiss a stranger, you don't tell a stranger where you live or your phone number, to someone who you're having an intimate relationship and who you can share that information with, and you can kiss and hug and hold. And really knowing that when you're at Kroger or Target, you can't go up to the bagger and tell them everything about your family. But that's something that you can tell a best friend. And really working on programs to identify when you're meeting someone new, where they fall in that relationship circle, and how you can interact with them, what you can say, and what you can do is very important. Making appropriate sexual choices as well. So identifying safe sexual behavior and hygiene. So knowing that you need to take precautions for safety, for pregnancy, for just overall general safety. And knowing that if you are in a relationship and you are not wanting to be sexually active, knowing how to say no. And that goes back to that whole choice making. And sometimes we work with individuals and say, do you want this or this? And they say no, and we still make them do it. And so really thinking about when we're asking someone to make a yes-no choice, and if they say no, honoring that. Because when they become adults, if they're in a relationship and they say no, they should be honored. That should be honored as well. And so that they know that no means no. And no means no on both ends. So if you're in a relationship and you're getting to a point of moving to a next level intimately, and that person says no, you stop. And so making sure that you are identifying those social cues to be appropriate in making healthy sexual choices. Physical well-being, we want to make sure that our mind, body, and spirit is strong. And so learning how to cope with stress. And sometimes we are in situations where something new is happening, we're interacting with a coworker, and we immediately feel a stress reaction. And it's not okay to fly off the handle at your boss, and it's not okay to just leave the job. You have to figure out how to deal with stress. So what is that going to look like? Is that asking for a break? Is it taking 5 minutes? Is it going to get a cup of water? Bathroom break? Is it deep breathing? A yoga pose? What is it going to take to reduce that stress that you can go on with what you're doing? Coupling that is sleep. If you don't have enough sleep, your ability to deal with stress is often compromised as well. So making sure that you're getting a full night's rest. And individuals on the spectrum often have a difficult time with this. And so sometimes medication is something that they can use to kind of unwind and relax and be able to sleep at night. There are other options as far as homeopathic remedies. There's a sound spa. Sometimes it's the white noise that can make a person fall asleep. So identifying what it is to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. And of course, those healthy choices that we talked about initially too. This is one of my favorite sayings, do what you like and like what you do. And this is something that's true for everybody. So if we're filling our body with goodness and really partaking in a job that we like, people that we want to be around, hobbies that we want to engage in, then you should be a very happy and healthy human being. So to wrap up, there are some resources that I want to share. The first thing that I think is extremely important are smartphone apps. And these can really help with medication management, those reminders to wake up in the morning so that you can get to work on time. You can set reminders that if you have to take a medication midday. There's organization. I know that we all do that with our smartphones. We have voice memos, we have our calendar, our scheduler, we have to-do lists, we have alarm set, all these things to keep us organized. And these are things that we should be teaching our students as well. For social skills, there's iLaugh, which I really like. It has, it's a joke database for appropriate jokes, not super corny. They're kind of age appropriate too, which I appreciate. There's manners and knowing etiquette for different situations. There's an emotion recognition practice tool too, so that sometimes people with autism have a difficult time reading other people's emotions. So this will help them kind of practice. It's almost like a game, which can be pretty reinforcing as well. There's numerous fitness apps. There's a 7-minute workout app where if that's all the time that they have, 7 minutes a day, it's still keeping them active. There's MyFitnessPal. There's Weight Watchers tracker. There's a variety of things out there, and many of them are free. So these are resources that are very useful. And then to talk about those anxiety and depression types of things, there's Mindshift and Pacifica that really are kind of self-soothing strategies and kind of walk a person through kind of a meditation or relaxation procedure. So those are some really useful tools. If you have any questions ever, feel free to email me. You can contact me at VCU at any time. And what you're going to be able to see now are perspectives from law enforcement and from a parent on these specific strategies for community participation and independence and how to be safe in these environments.
Hello, I'm Tim Sutton. I'm a law enforcement officer here in the state of Virginia, and we're going to cover some issues on autism and cover this case study. The title is Prompting Personal Health and Independence and Community Participation and Safety for Individuals with Autism, ASD, Law Enforcement Perspective. We're going to talk about Tom, who's an 18-year-old high school senior. And with Tom, it's a very good possibility he will integrate into society, learn the life skills, learn social skills, and be able to be a very productive member of society. And we want to fast forward a few years so we can cover some issues that could arise. With autism, it needs to be realized, everybody needs to realize, the parents, the individuals with autism, Asperger's, or any other issues need to understand there is a very high number of contacts between those individuals and public safety in general. Public safety, I'm talking fire, EMS, as well as law enforcement. Me being a law enforcement officer, it is not unusual once a week to be going on a call that's related to autism, and it's not just a wandering issue or eloping. We'll cover a little bit of that in just a few, but the general public safety community needs training on autism. Specifically law enforcement, there are so many studies out there showing that individual with autism is 7 times more likely to have a law enforcement encounter than the general public. This fact alone indicates that law enforcement, specifically in the Commonwealth of Virginia and elsewhere, need training on autism. It's imperative that it be done. Like I said, the issue is not just the wandering and eloping. There are so many other issues where officers are responding to calls for service that involve autism, and we'll cover a few of those. In Virginia right now, autism training is not mandatory. There are a few states in the country where autism is mandatory training for law enforcement. Virginia, it is not. There is training available, but those who need to be trained are your officers, your law enforcement officers, your school resource officers. And if you think about school resource officers, they're in school with your children 5 days a week. They're interacting with them. They're seeing them in the halls. They need to understand autism and what it's all about. You've got corrections, jails, prisons, juvenile holding facilities. They need training on autism. I guarantee you right now there are individuals who are incarcerated who have autism, and those people that are working with them, working in the facilities, need to understand autism. Magistrates, judges, nurses, hospitals, you've got nurses in the correction facilities. They need to understand. And also your educators, those in the schools, those other employees in the schools, Everybody needs an understanding. The bus drivers who transport the children back and forth to school need to understand autism. Right now, there is training available, and it's been available for the past 4 or 5 years. I've traveled the state with a couple other officers and a representative from Commonwealth Autism training, doing a 4-hour autism training, and we've actually started doing a train the trainer so we can train other officers to go out and teach the curriculum. But as far as mandates, it is not mandated. We've trained thousands of officers throughout the state, as well as magistrates. We've had many magistrates in classes. I brought up nurses. We've had judges that have gone through training, and the feedback we get is amazing. They want to know why we're not teaching it more. So I would encourage parents to voice your need for the training in the criminal justice system, specifically law enforcement. The teaching starts with the parents. You all are at home with your children, and it's got to start with you all before it goes anywhere else. A lot of the social behavior, Tom may integrate into society. Hopefully, even though it seems a little unusual restroom social behavior, I would dare say that women, when you go to a public restroom, there may be conversation. You may walk in and carry on a conversation with somebody else in the restroom, some other lady in the restroom, compliment somebody on a blouse. Unfortunately for men, when we go into a public restroom, sometimes, there's very little eye contact. So if you've got a child that's been raised by mom, typically going out with mom, because when mom's at the mall with all the children and somebody has to use the restroom, where do they typically go? They go to the women's room. So you've got a young boy that's seeing the interaction of mom walking in, complimenting somebody on their blouse, or actually having a conversation with somebody in the restroom. Once he's 17, 18, 19 years old, goes into a men's room. Typically in men's room, and I'm sure most males can attest to the fact that there's not a conversation going on in a men's room. There's very little eye contact. You go in, you take care of your business, and you leave. Now, if Tom has seen mom and her etiquette or social interactions in the bathroom, he may walk into the men's room and try to strike up conversations with other individuals in there. If he's got interests that are not specific to his age, if he's got interests in things that maybe a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old is interested in, and strikes up a conversation, being an adult, strikes up a conversation with a child in the bathroom and keeps on, do you see, I'm hoping you can see how that could possibly lead to an encounter with law enforcement. You may have a family member call and say, hey, there's somebody in the men's restroom. There's a man in there trying to strike up conversations with children. So we need to be able to, at home, teach the appropriate behaviors. Restaurants, what to do, what not to do in restaurants. I know specifically a couple individuals who are on the spectrum, and they think in McDonald's, every French fry in that restaurant is their French fry. That's all theirs. And they will walk through the restaurant, reaching over on people's tables and taking the French fries. This, as parents, this needs to be covered with your children, and try to teach and stress that this is not appropriate behavior, because 20 years from then if they were in a McDonald's walking around taking French fries off of people's trays, there's a good possibility law enforcement is going to be called in reference to larcenies or something like that. So hopefully we need to do what we can to train our children to curb these incidents from happening. Sporting events, issues of sporting events, how to behave. Yeah, many kids will get riled up, many parents will get riled up, but understanding what is appropriate and what's not. Driving, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate as far as driving, cutting people off and things, but understanding what to do if they do get pulled over. I have taught numerous classes, and many times I bring families in who have family members on the spectrum. One in particular, the mother had told her son if he ever got pulled over, he needed to be very polite to the officer and needed to put his hands on the steering wheel and not to take his hands off of the steering wheel. Well, this young man got pulled over. He was going 85 miles an hour in the 55 zone, got pulled over. Officer walked up, leaned in the car and said, I need to see your driver's license registration. His mother had told him, be polite to the officer, which he was, but to put those hands on the steering wheel and do not let go. Yet the officer's telling him, I need you to grab your driver's license registration. So in his mind, what do? Do I do what my mother says? Or do I do what the officer says? And he began to get nervous. Luckily, the situation went well. Everything was resolved. But as you can see, it is a recipe for disaster. Train your children, teach your children how to interact with law enforcement. Yes, be polite. I'll have a couple slides on that to give you a few tips on what to do. But I get asked many times, what does autism have to do with law enforcement? And those are the specific incidences I'm talking about. Those little things that many people do not think about until it's too late and you have an unfortunate situation. My goal is to get out there, and we all need to be out there trying to raise the awareness so we don't have these unfortunate situations. Law enforcement interaction, teach your children how to approach and interact with officers. How do you do that? Well, express to your child that we are there for their safety. Many times as a law enforcement officer, we go into situations and we hear the parents tell the children, either you behave or he's going to take you to jail. That's not the perception we want to give these children. We don't want to give that perception to anybody. They need to understand that we are here for their safety and everybody else's safety. Teach them to be polite to the officer. They need to listen to the officer. They need to obey the officer. If the officer asks them to do something, they need to do it. Tell the officer, if they're to the point where they can express to the officer, I have autism or I have Asperger's, let the officer know so that encounter or that interaction can go favorably. There's nothing wrong with letting the officer know that. Hopefully the officer has had training, but even if the officer has not, maybe they'll realize, okay, I might need to handle this situation a little bit differently. Do not touch an officer's equipment. You know, I try to stress to officers not to, if you know somebody has autism, don't invade their personal space. Respect that personal space. But many times I've had it happen to me. Individual with autism will walk up and they will walk into my personal space and they will start touching things on my belt. These are your magazines. This is your taser. This is your gun. You know, hopefully there's an underlying issue where I can tell, if I've never met the person, I can tell that something is a little different. But with autism, there's typically no visible indicator. So it's something you need to let your children know it's not okay to go up and touch things on their belt. Where I ran across this was a young man. He was 6 years old when I met him, and I dealt with him for 4 years. His fixation was my gun or any officer's gun. And whenever you saw him, he would walk up and touch your gun, want to touch your gun. And it got so bad where I was sitting talking to his mother and father, and I felt something, and I looked down, and he was laying on the floor and had his finger up the barrel of my gun. He was fixated on that weapon. Now, you may look and say, oh, it's a 6-year-old. No, it's not a good thing to teach the child. But, you know, yeah, it's kind of cute. He really likes police officers. But again, bump it ahead 15, 20 years. If he's out in public by himself, nobody's with him, and I'm working a job, maybe I'm standing in Walmart, and I have this grown man who looks no different than anybody else comes up to me and grabs my weapon, I'd consider that an assault on me, and I'm trying to do my job. I try to grab hold of him. If he's hypersensitive to touch, it's painful for him. He's going to react. So I'm rolling around trying to control the situation, thinking I'm being assaulted as a law enforcement officer. He's trying to get my gun. And when I'm finally able to get him under control, I've got him in handcuffs, and he's laying on the floor, and I'm breathing so hard, waiting on my backup. It would have been very nice if I had been trained or somebody would have told me that many times with autism, muscles are underdeveloped. They're hypotonic, specifically the trunk muscles, because as I'm waiting on my backup and he's laying there on the ground, positional asphyxiation, he's going to die. He's going to suffocate right there. That's the information that needs to be out there for law enforcement. We need to understand those things. Also, JP's law, right now, individuals on the spectrum with autism, Asperger's, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities can go to DMV voluntarily. There's nothing mandatory, but it's voluntary, where they can receive an ID card if they're not driving or not old enough to drive, and or a driver's license with an innocuous indicator on the back of the card that shows AD, ASD, to hopefully give the officer an indication when they pull them over or have that encounter or look at their ID, okay, this person has autism. Hopefully that officer's been trained and understands what it's all about, as opposed to looking at it and not knowing anything about autism or any other special need. Officers need to understand. These are the things I try to stress to officers throughout the state or around the country when I have the privilege to go there. It's the lack of eye contact. We in law enforcement are typically taught if we're asking you questions or we're interviewing you and you're not looking back at us in the eye when you answer your question, you're being deceptive. That is the training that is conducted. Well, with autism, that's not necessarily going to be the case. You will not typically get that look right back in the eye. And they're listening to you, they understand what you're saying. Many times they're processing what you asked as they're looking around. They're watching everything else. They're familiar with things and they're picking up on things that we as officers probably don't even realize are there. But they're absorbing everything. Their senses are just absorbing all of it. Stimming, the flapping, the turning around, the humming, drowning out noises. Officers need to understand that that occurs when the individual becomes overstimulated. They're trying to cope. So for an officer who we're always taught to be in control, we come up, put your hands up, get your hands out of your pocket, stop flapping your hands, stop turning around in circles. Officers need to realize that telling somebody with autism to stop doing those stimming activities is going to be more of a stressor than if they're allowed to continue it. I stress to the officers also, if they are stimming, if they're standing there just doing their hands, tightening up, and it's not hurting anything, let them continue doing that. It's going to make your interaction better. You're going to get further. If you're trying to constantly tell them to stop doing this or that, it's going to be frustrating for you and may unfortunately turn into a bad situation. If there's a knife in somebody's hand and they're stimming, yeah, we've got to protect ourselves. We've got to protect that person. We may have to find a way to get that knife out and tell them to stop. But in certain situations where there is no threat, we need to let them continue doing what they're doing. The literalness of autism, be careful how you speak to them, what you say, the terminology, because they may very well, if you say, do you want to take a ride with me? General public's going to think, oh my gosh, he's getting ready to take me to jail. Somebody with autism may run and jump in the car and think they're going to go for a ride. We need to be aware of the hyper and hyposensitivity issues for all the senses, not just the external senses, but the internal, the digestion, muscle, the balance, all of those. We need to understand that in our job. The catastrophic reactions, understanding that if they do get startled, they may have a catastrophic reaction. So you don't want to be in a situation where you may startle. You need to calm them down. Calm breeds calm. And also the no fear issue, the understanding that if I walk into this pond and I can't swim, I will drown. If I walk out into traffic, I may get hit by a car. They may not understand that fear that's involved because of the autism. A perfect example of some of the behaviors that we see with autism, I try to stress that it's not always a behavior that individual is choosing. When we look outside today, it's nice outside. We've had some sun warming up a little bit, but when we look outside and we see the trees with the leaves or flowers blooming, we see what's above the surface. That's what we see, that foliage. But what we don't often take into account is what is causing all that to happen. What is causing that to happen are those roots that we can't see. So with behaviors, so-called behaviors in autism, the meltdowns, the tantrums, you hear many parents say, oh, you need to spank that child, you need to discipline that child. Sometimes those behaviors or what we perceive as behaviors are not behaviors at all. They are responding to something that is overstimulating and they're trying to cope. And we need to understand what those underlying issues are in our job as to what, it may be the blue lights flashing, it may be our loud radio, because we have our radios cranked up as loud as possible. We have the sirens. So those may be overstimulating the individual, and that is what's causing it. So to bring it all together, I would encourage families to meet with the SROs. Tom, I'm sure he's at a school that probably has a school resource officer. Family needs to meet. Get him to meet the officer, understand what the officer is all about, and that would be a new friend for him. Ask your local law enforcement facility, agency to take a tour. See if you come up there and meet. Tom can meet some people. Have a photo opportunity. This would go for anybody. Have a photo taken. I guarantee the officers would be glad to do it. Take an officer, put him beside your son, have him stand there and take a picture. Take a picture of that, make it print, put it up in their room so it's a constant reminder who my friend is, that uniform, that officer. Encourage agency-wide training and statewide agency training. Offer to attend the training. Be a participant in the training. It's one thing to sit up there and talk about it or stand up there and talk about it, but when the officers can see autism firsthand, it makes a huge difference. The positive experience will stay. If they have these positive encounters with law enforcement, they will be in their mind. They will remember that officer keeps me safe. I've had many who are nonverbal with autism, but one thing they can say when the parent asks, as I come up, what does he do? He keeps me safe. They can tell you that. Request the agency adopt a tracking system if wandering is an issue. Wandering is a huge issue. The agencies are dealing with it. They need to develop some type of tracking system, and should they incorporate it, it offers the opportunity for the officers to meet the families and become involved in their families and their life. Autism right now, according to the CDC, is 1 in 68 births. It's not going away. I wish, today they would develop a cure to help some of the families, but it's not going away. The fact is, we don't know why. We know it's there, but public safety, criminal justice system, law enforcement, we will be dealing with it, so we need to be prepared to deal with it. And I encourage you to go out there and ask for more training. These are the training opportunities that are out there between Department of Criminal Justice, Commonwealth Autism, and a few of us officers in the state. We are training. Contact any of these groups right here. Mine is a better understanding. My goal is to get out there and train anybody, like I said, in the general public, anybody who comes in contact with the general public, to understand the behaviors related to autism. So the right things are done, less people are getting hurt, and we can all, the officers and the families and the individuals, can go home safe. Appreciate the time, and please look into promoting the training. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tammy Burns, and I am a parent of 3 children. I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old. My 17-year-old has autism. He was diagnosed at 18 months and then reconfirmed that diagnosis again at age 3. So I've been in the ASD world for quite a while. And today I'm here to talk to you about personal health and independence and community participation and safety from a parent's perspective. As I said, my son is 17, and we decided many years ago that our family, one of the things we wanted for our son is for him to be seen as part of the community, to be seen that way at school, in the neighborhood, at church. We wanted him to be a part of it and not just on the outside looking in. We didn't want him to be seen as a guy who comes in and out of things for periodic time periods, but really wanted him to be a part. We felt like inclusion in the community was a very valuable thing, and we wanted him to be seen as valuable by the people that he's around, because our family holds a strong value that we believe that everybody in the community has something to bring to the table, something that they can share and something that other people can learn. So we've made it an important goal in our family for him to be a part of that community, and it's been not such an easy road sometimes, but something that we felt has been worthwhile. What's not easy about it is we can't control other people in the community's behavior. We can't control his, but we absolutely can't control how other people react to him and what they bring to a conversation. The world doesn't always act like we would want it to act. And sometimes, as a parent, I'll be honest, it's easier just to kind of stay at home and maintain life in a safe, known environment instead of pushing out into the community where things are unknown and where we're not sure how people are going to react. But we decided that's not the kind of quality of life that we wanted for our son. So we have strived to do sometimes these things that are not always easy. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've done and how that happens, just to kind of give you our family's perspective on that. One of the things that as a mom I found I've had to do is to slowly give up control, which is not easy for me. For many years, I've been the one who's been in charge of my son's choices in his activities, in his school IEPs, in whatever's happening in his life. I have been the main choice maker. And I've had to realize as he's growing up and he's getting older, especially especially he's 17, he'll be 18 in a few months, that the decisions I'm making and the things I'm choosing to do are about his life, not my life. I've made those decisions for my life. And it's time to allow him to be able to make some of those choices on his own and learn from those choices. So I have had to do the hard thing of slowly giving up control in making those choices for him. We're doing something I call shared decision making, where he and I and my husband and sometimes all of our family will get together and make choices and talk about the choices as opposed to just making the choices for him. Because I've come to realize, like I said, as he's getting older, I'm getting older, and the reality of the fact that I will not always be there, is real. And I need to work with him while I am here to help him learn how to make good and healthy choices, to learn how to advocate for himself and learn how to tell people when he needs things and what those things are that he needs. I'm still learning to do that. It's scary, and it's a lot easier just to make the choices myself, but it's not what's best for him, and it's not what's best for everybody in the long run. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not a quick, easy fix, but it is things that we find are important. And the more we've done it, we now, for example, we can go out to eat at a restaurant, Buffalo Wild Wings, one of his favorites, and more people there know him than know us. And so we're starting to see that community participation from so long ago is really starting to change how the community sees him as well. So some of the ways we've done that, it's about finding the right activities. And so we've looked for things like shared interest groups. While he's in school, we've tried to find groups that he could fit into, something that he might be interested in. So like a lot of high schools or middle schools have a computer club. Computer club has been a great one to kind of fit into. He may not do exactly what other people are doing, but everybody in the computer club likes to look at, work with, get on the internet. And so that's been a good place. Our high school has a sci-fi club. And so the sci-fi club, he fits in real well there because they like to talk about Pokemon and whatever, Zelda and all these things, and he can talk right along with them on that. So, and they tend to be very open and accepting kids in the sci-fi club at our school, so that's been a good fix. We look for those shared interests. And we also look for areas, activities of things that build on his strengths. Jared is a kid who likes routine. He likes to know what's coming. And so we tried to find activities in the community that were very routine, followed the same kind of pattern each time. So, for example, in middle school, he got involved in the recycling club. He's not really into recycling, I wouldn't say, but taking out the recycling at our house and the trash has been something he's been doing since he was a little guy. So we knew he could do that. And the recycling club has a pattern they follow. They come in, they check in, they get divided into groups, they go do their certain stations, and then when they return from doing their stations, they get pizza. Right up his alley because he had a reward at the end for doing it, and so he was able to participate very easily into the recycling club. You were in a group of 2 or 3 at a time, and so it wasn't overwhelming socially, and really was a positive experience for him. We also try to look for groups that are open to differences. As I said, the sci-fi group tends to be that group in our high school. One thing we thought was going to work, we've had some things that we thought were going to work and they didn't quite work. We thought was going to work. He likes news, and there was a group of kids who he already knew and they got involved in school news, and so we said, well, let's get Jared involved with that. And we got involved in the school news, and then the teacher changed. And when the teacher moved and the teacher changed, it kind of changed the dynamics of the group. And so we had to back out of that and look for something else. But in the process of that, we found sports. And that, if you had asked me if he would have been involved in a sports group right away, I would have said no, because he's not super coordinated, and sports are not, he doesn't know a lot about or follow a lot of sports, but he has learned, and it's actually been a group that's been open to differences, and that's what has been the big thing there. They're open to somebody who doesn't quite follow, the same communication rules that other people might, but somebody who's willing to work. He's willing to fill their water bottles every day, and he loves that opportunity to be involved in that community, and it has made a huge difference for him in the high school area. So just looking for those groups that might be open sometimes are a good way to go. Another thing we've done, and I would suggest for parents, is to work on skills that your child needs to be successful in the community. So if you want them to be in the community, they're going to need some skills. So work on those skills. Some things to do or discuss rules for specific community areas. Like, what are the rules for restrooms, restaurants, sporting events? All those things have different social rules. As a parent, you'll have to kind of look at it from the outside looking in and say, okay, what are the rules here? And then share with your child what the rules are. Who do you talk to? Who do you not talk to? What's it okay to do in those areas? What's it okay to talk about in those areas? And make sure your child has the skills to be successful in those places. Target skills that you see are causing your child to struggle in the community in general. So if your child is out in the community and you know that one of the things they're having difficulty with, for example, is telling someone their name and their phone number in an emergency situation. So make sure then, okay, we need to stop and we need to teach this skill. Or if they don't know that they are to wash their hands when they leave the restroom. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That skill is important if they're going to be working in a restaurant or just eating out with friends or something. So find the skills they're missing and begin to target some of those skills. And then make sure that they always know what to do if they need help in a situation. Because as I said, mom's not always going to be there. If you want your child to be participating in the community, you need to teach them what to do if you're not there. And so if mom's not there, dad's not there, and they find they need help, who do they contact? Who is the person that's okay to ask for help? Do they know how to call you on their cell phone or text you on their cell phone? If practice ends early, what do they do? We had a situation just 3 weeks ago, I think, where Jared was supposed to stay after school for practice. And it was the day of a hurricane warning or tornado warning or something like that, and they canceled all after-school activities after the school buses had left and everything was gone. And so fortunately, we had taught him if things like that happen, you call home and say, I need you to come pick me up, which is what he did. But if that had not been the case, it could have been a really bad situation because everybody was leaving the school building and he needed to know how to take care of himself at that point. So figure out what those skills are and figure out, make sure you teach them the safety pieces of that. Teach them self-advocacy and self-determination so they know how to say what they need and what they don't need in a situation. And I will put a plug in real quick for the I'm Determined Youth Summit here in Virginia. If you're in Virginia, it's a great place for students in middle school and high school with disabilities to attend this youth summit and begin working on some of those advocacy and self-determination skills. And also those kind of things can be added as part of your child's IEP. So you don't have to be the only one working on this at home, but it is important to not just have it being worked on at school as well, but to be working on it at home. Do what I call be a bridge builder. Sorry, that's hard to say, be a bridge builder. But help other people see your child's potential. For us, that has meant helping other people see that Jared can be a part of their activity or what's going on in the community by showing some of the positive things that he can do there. And then when we see that happening, we have taken a proactive stance on trying to make sure to encourage the people in the community that are including him, that are supporting him with a natural support, and praising them, giving them the positive reinforcement of thank you for helping him be a part He's really enjoying this, letting them know how important it has been in his life. And that's made a huge difference, because then those people, those students or those teachers, have begun to build bridges for him without us, and have made that connection to the community a lot easier. Find and encourage those natural supports. You'll find kids, just in general, there are people in the world there's just some people who are just caring people. They want to care, they want to take care of, they want to support. Find those people and connect your child with one or two of them. We found, a young lady who likes to take care, likes to care for people. She's a caring person. And so she's brought her friends every day. They eat lunch with Jared. He has a whole group of people now that he eats lunch with, that he didn't really have to socially go out and seek, which was good because that's a difficult skill for him. She brought it in, and throughout, with her doing that kind of natural support and bridge building, his support group, his little group of friends at lunch, has grown. And they all know him, and now kind of have built this little natural lunch bunch, for lack of a better word, and it's really been a big difference for him at the lunchroom. Sometimes as a parent, I've volunteered at the school to try to begin to get my head around what's happening in the school and how to find places for Jared to connect, and where things would work and where things wouldn't. So that's also another option if you have that time to volunteer. Don't volunteer too much, because you also need to back off and let them begin to take ownership, but volunteer enough that you can kind of get an idea of places and things that your child might be a part of. So community participation and inclusion is not always easy, as I've said, but it can make all the difference in your child's life, not just now, but as an adult, and how much they're able to participate, and how much they're able to be a part of their community. It's all about quality of life and the kind of life that they end up living as an adult. And I would just encourage you as a parent to stretch your child a little bit each day, and also stretch yourself in this a little bit each day, and it will make a huge difference. Thank you.